Austin Ekeler, the type of back he is, a little bigger than Gibbs, but same play style. Well, ideally, what you want Gibbs to be is kind of what Austin Eckler's been. Now, you like him to get 1,000. I would. That's why I compared him more to Alvin Kamara. But regardless, they're not 1,000-yard backs, Ekeler and Kamara. They're just guys that'll get you 800. And that's kind of what we envision for Jahmyr Gibbs. So what Ekeler was saying there, he's right, 100%. Now, is this production ideal through 4 games? I'm not sweating it because, like he alluded to already, you got a guy in David Montgomery that, again, and I made this point against the Packers, the style of running in which he does, the physical, the type of runner to wear defenses down. That's what David brings to the table, and that's kind of what they needed last game against the Packers. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is averaging through 4 games, 4.6 yards per carry. He's got 180, basically 179 yards rushing on the year. And even though I'll mention my one ask of Jahmyr or of this offense is to get Jahmyr more involved in the passing game, I really can't even talk too much. It's probably more of how they're using him because targets-wise, he's getting about 4 a game. So if you do the averages through 4 games. So like even the targets are there in the passing game. I'm not worried about Jahmyr. I think the only thing everybody, and I would speak for Lions fans on this, is you're waiting for him to just pop one because he has the ability to. He had a 20-yard run, a 21-yard run against the Falcons. He kind of saw a flash of that. Had an 18-yard run against Kansas City on the road. But I'm not going to overreact here. You'd like him to get in the end zone one of these days, and I know it's coming soon, so I'm not going to panic. But there you go, Austin Ekeler speaking on Jahmyr Gibbs. What are your thoughts on it, Sam?
Sure, and Austin Ekeler is one of those backs. He's one of the 2 in the NFL right now, at least in this era, who have dominated from the running back position while never having an 1,000-yard season. And I think some people envision that from Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, even when he enters his prime. And here's a couple of reasons to not worry about Jahmyr Gibbs for me. Is one, what he did against Atlanta when he was actually asked to be a starter. He carried the ball 17 times for 80 yards, 4.7 yards per carry. He did more than enough to help them win that game, and I was very, very happy with what I saw. And the other reason, too, is because the Lions are winning. They are 3-1, and I'll be honest, if the Lions were having a disappointing season, if they were 2-2 and 1-3, and Jahmyr Gibbs was putting up this kind of production, I probably would be pretty worried.
But even if David was playing the way he's playing.
Well, here's the thing.
Because what's the record have to do with it?
All right, so here's actually my point as to why this whole Jahmyr Gibbs conversation does kind of bother me a little bit. It's not necessarily with what Jahmyr Gibbs has done, because as somebody in the chat just mentioned, it's Blade Noisewood. He says that he has averaging 4.6 yards per carry, Jahmyr Gibbs, which is very, very good on 39 carries.
And you're a yards per carry guy.
I am a huge yards per carry guy.
We know.
It's much higher.
Herbert.
Hey, it's much higher than David Montgomery's, by the way. But you know what? I wasn't even going to go there. I wasn't going to go there.
Well, you went there.
And you're not.
All right, and I'm not going to go there.
Keep driving the bus.
All right.
Keep driving the bus.
All right. But here's the thing. It's not necessarily with Jahmyr Gibbs' production. It's with certain factions of Lions fans, because I think there are some people who are being a little bit too hard on Jahmyr Gibbs. If you're already saying that he could be a bust, I think that is very, very, very premature, especially considering the offense has played well and the Lions have played well. But this idea, too, that you have to kind of ease him in or whatnot, oh, he's just a rookie, that kind of bothers me a little bit, too. And you know what else bothers me? I'm not seeing this dynamic pass catcher that I was promised. I'm seeing somebody who has 14 receptions for 70 yards for 5 yards per catch. I'm not seeing somebody that you could think could be maybe their second or third leading receiver this year. I'm just not seeing that at all. I'm not seeing somebody that you can line up in the slot. I'm seeing someone that they're just kind of giving these short little passes to with no room for him to run in space. And furthermore, one of my problems with the whole Jahmyr Gibbs isn't getting a lot of usage, and that's fine argument, is that since 2010, and yes, I am going to bring this up, and a lot of people aren't going to like this, but you're just going to have to listen. Since 2010, 18 rookie running backs has rushed for 1,000 yards in a season. 18. 11 of them were not first-round draft picks. 6 of them were fifth-round draft picks or higher. And out of all of those 6, 3 of them were undrafted. Right. And people are just kind of talking about how, like, Jahmyr Gibbs, he's not going to... One second. Yeah. 1 second, and then I'll come to you. Oh, Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot of people, when they drafted him, were like, he's not an every down back. He's not an 1,000-yard back. Well, good thing you drafted him at number 12. You know who isn't a 1,000-yard back? Bijan Robinson. You know who else isn't a 1,000-yard back? Devon Achane, who you got in the 3rd round. So who the Dolphins got in the 3rd round. So no, the Lions shouldn't worry too much because they're winning. But Jahmyr Gibbs, I just don't see star. I see solid contributor to a good offense. Lucas?
But to the point of all these running backs being taken and them being 1,000-yard backs, like, they don't have a David Montgomery in front of them. They don't have a Amon-Ra St. Brown outside of them. They don't have that offensive line in front of them. So just the way that they're being used, in my opinion, you got to put the context in there. Like, when you look at Christian McCaffrey, you can look at his early stats. Like, because if you look at the first 4-game rushing numbers, they're similar. You go to the receiving end, it's different. But their wide receiver 1 was Devin Funchess. They had the corpse of Greg Olsen. They had Jonathan Stewart there in the middle line, and Cam Newton at that point could not throw the ball down the field. That's why they drafted Christian McCaffrey. So if you look at the context of this offense and how he's being used, I really don't have a problem with it, because I think they've given him opportunities. Like, we all remember that slant that he dropped. And then so you look at that, but then you also see Sam Laporta, who's the definition of consistency right now. You're 3-1. You see that Gibbs can do those things with his potential, but he hasn't yet. You see that Sam Laporta already is doing those things. So it's one of those things where if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I'm not saying that Jahmyr Gibbs is being everything that we thought he would be yet to this point, but I still think like he has everything that the Lions wanted to him. Like last week when they used him on that reverse with Khalif Raymond, the fact that defense collapsed that fast, that hard to the edge, and they could flip it to Khalif, like that's Jahmyr being a playmaker without it showing up on the stat books. And now I understand that that's not what you draft him for. But that shows you that for around the NFL, they respect that man and what he can do. And just with time, like if he was getting the 17 carries that he did against Atlanta, I guarantee we would have seen a big play if he had that every week. But the fact of the nature, he doesn't. He has a dog in front of him that's going to allow him to learn the game, that's going to mentor him in ways that he's not really used to because he didn't run in between the tackles that much to Alabama.
Right.
David Montgomery runs between the tackles relentlessly every game. So now D-Mont can kind of mentor him in that aspect. So I just think this overall will be better for Jahmyr Gibbs' longevity with the Lions.
Yeah, and this coming to Chris Evans. Shout out to Chris Evans. He was drafted with the intent to be a weapon for years to come, not to be a star by week 5. Now, but to your point, though, Sam, because actually I get where you're coming from. And my thought process on it, because I've always had that philosophy, is if I'm drafting a running back, unless he's like, you know, one every decade type of running back. There's certain guys that you take, like a Saquon Barkley. I thought that was, even Saquon, though, his career, and look where he's at now. I mean, he had a couple great years. It is what it is. Zeke Elliott, he gave the Cowboys 5 years, and then after that, it was over. You don't want Gibbs. You're not going to give Gibbs that type of bell cow work. He's a guy that was advertised as a weapon. Now, for me to get behind it, and this is my thought process on it, I'm still kind of waiting to see it more, but it is only 4 games, is him be a weapon. Like, if he's just a running back, then yeah, like, we can have that conversation. But again, for people that are saying he's a weapon, I agree with you. But we just got to see more going forward. I'm not going to overreact through 4 games. I think he'll be a big part of the passing game still. I think it's early to say, you know, wow, what was advertised to me, him being involved in the passing game, it ain't working. And no, I'm going to wait till J-Mo gets back, because someone else brought up a good point. Devon Achane, however he wants to pronounce his name, that offense he's a part of, it's like 4 of the fastest players in the NFL. Like, so, like, I get that reasoning for it, because you got to account for Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, and then you got, of course, now Devin Achane, and then Raheem Mostert, those guys in the backfield. So for Achane, he's at least in a high-powered offense. This offense is great for the Lions. But I do think adding a guy like J-Mo could open up some things for him. And I'm not going to panic yet. But the path for this to make sense, Sam Flannel, is he's got to be a weapon, not just a running back.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. I haven't seen weapon. I've seen kind of your, I would say, number 2 running back who could be a starter on other teams, because, and a lot of people aren't going to like this, but these are just the numbers. Jahmyr Gibbs, to me, has had 0.0 impact in the passing game. And if you would have told me that through the first 4 games, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said that was a disaster of a pick. And I'm not saying it has been a disaster of a pick, because the Lions have been very good. They are 3-1. All I'm saying is it is a very, very good thing that the Lions' second-round picks this year have been exemplary, 2 of your best players on the team. Because Jahmyr Gibbs, I would say, has been a little bit of a disappointment, and we haven't even talked about another person who probably needs a little more usage, the guy they picked at 18. More on him probably later in the year. Yeah,
and again, for at least Jahmyr Gibbs, he has double-digit carries in 1 game. That's against the Falcons. He almost averaged 5 yards per carry.
So very good.
And that's a run defense who just shut down Travis Etienne, who's a back that they compared to Jahmyr Gibbs Gibbs a lot, especially in the receiving game.
So
and he didn't do much either.
Right. And so again, like he got more touches, basically double what he's been getting all year. He got 17 and he had 80 yards with a 21-yard run. So again, I'm not going to hit the panic button yet on Jahmyr Gibbs. I think there's still plenty left. And for David Montgomery, who we'll talk about later in the show, when he brought up the comparison, which is funny because for those who have been watching this show for a while, when he was drafted, that was my ideal. That was my pitcher for this backfield. Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara. David brought that up on Amon-Ra St. Brown and EQ St. Brown, their podcast, and mentioned, like, that's what I kind of see. Like, when Mark when Mark was in his prime, he was the 1,200-yard back, and then you had Alvin Kamara who can give you 800 yards, but also giving you 800 yards receiving. I think Gibbs will grow into that player, give you that type of production, and if he's doing that, Sam, I can make it make sense.
Of course,
but
yes,
that's the thing.
yes.
We still got to see. So
Yes.
I'm not gonna overreact yet through 4 games. And again, that Atlanta game down the stretch when they needed him, when Atlanta knew the Lions were gonna run the football, the offense was predictable at that point. They knew the Lions wanted to run the football. Gibbs still made plays.
He stepped up in that
So
game. I give him credit for that game.
I think if there was a game where, like, David Montgomery, and knock on wood, if David Montgomery were to have a significant injury, I am completely comfortable with Jahmyr Gibbs being the number 1 running back for the Lions, and I think that's something that we have to take account into. Like, we're just dealing with a luxury at the running back position right now.
And speak easy. Shout out to Easy Man for joining the show. Heavyweights 5 to 7. Check those boys out, man. They just returned yesterday, so big time for the network. We missed you guys, man. Easy says it's mostly fantasy guys. Honestly, that's true. It feels like all the bitching is. No, have you seen at least fantasy football Twitter?
I know,
like freaking out about Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not that bad, and you're not even that bad.
Right. No, it hasn't been about his touchdowns or anything like that. I know a lot of people who drafted Jahmyr Gibbs want him to get more red zone carries because David Montgomery is pretty much getting all of them. It's just been with his usage as a whole and his production primarily. And I said this before, it's not just about his rushing yards. It's the fact that he hasn't been that weapon. He's been a very solid number 2 back who's given you very little catching the football. That's just facts. So far. Could he improve? Absolutely.
And again, Mark Royal, the problem is Gibbs has had no impact. There were other players that the Lions could have picked that would have had an impact at 12. I don't play fantasy. No impact is aggressive.
No, and saying he has no impact is just not true. Like, that's exactly why I brought up the point about on the reverse with Khalif Raymond. Like, for the whole conversation of people talking about J-Mo being a presence out there, you can say the same exact thing with Jahmyr Gibbs being a running back. Like, his presence on the field alone is an impact, and if you don't respect that, then I guarantee Ben Johnson's going to see that and exploit it. Like, the linebackers are sweating every time they see Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield, whether it's going to him or not. And that is the definition of an impact. And if that doesn't show on a stat sheet, I'm sorry. But that's just facts. Like, you got to acknowledge that part of the game.
Yeah, I love 12 overall pick decoys. My favorite.
Well, no,
that's not what I'm saying right now, Flannel. But when people are like, he has no impact, that's not what you're saying.
Right.
The people that are saying that there's no impact, it's just ignorant. It's just like, watch the game and how he's actually being used, even if the ball is not in his hands. Like, it matters. It matters. That's what good coaches do to open up other players.
If you say Jahmyr has no impact, like, go ask opposing defensive coordinators. Like, you think they're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs like, you don't got to worry about him. Let's go to no. Of course they're gonna have to account for Jahmyr. Like, the guy's got now home run hitting speed. We just haven't seen a home run, and that's what I'm waiting on. It'll come. I'm not worried about it. Again, for this pick to be justified to me, and maybe I'm off base here, he has to be a weapon. That's for me. A weapon. That's what we all called him. That's what I think he is still, and we'll see how that progresses. That's all. That's the path for Lions fans. All Lions fans, and the majority of them are okay with his production. But the ones that are unhappy, if he's advertised as a weapon, I think it'll be easier. It'll be an easier pill for everybody to swallow. Like, you'll be like, all right, we got, because if Jahmyr was a wide receiver and listed at wide receiver, you took him at 12, no one's complaining. You could take wide receivers at 12, but running backs, I get it.
All it takes is one 30-yard screen pass where he breaks one guy's ankles, and everybody will be like, oh! But until then, where people are going to bitch and complain. But I can assure you that is going to happen in the 17-game season. And everybody's going to be like, Jahmyr Gibbs. Because that's going to happen. Then they're going to bring in David Montgomery for 3 straight plays and bruise it down. And then they're going to check it down to Amon-Ra St. Brown for a touchdown. And be like, wow, this offense...